So I will start the session by playing a little game, a role-playing game, since with base registries, there are different roles that different people play, and it's actually the interaction of the different roles that create the base registries. So first, put yourself in the shoes of Policymaker Laura. She has some sort of questions which she needs answered. So, for example, how do we determine which registry is a base registry, which is a very common question which a lot of people have. And all these questions need to be answered if you want to have interconnected base registries. And let's look at IT Practitioner Kurt. This guy has more IT-related questions. So how do we create common data models? How do we interconnect the base registry? So these are some questions that people who are working on the development have. But let's look at the third guy, Politician John. This guy is going to be very important for you guys, since you need a sponsor. And you need to have the things being driven from up top. You need to convince guys like Politician John that whatever you are trying to deliver is going to help deliver whatever he wants delivered. So it's important to look at the political level and convince the guys at top that whatever you're doing is very important. And this is very important. Because if you look at the EIF conceptual model, you have public services at the top. And public services is something that the public administrations need to deliver. And they need to deliver them in a way that that the citizens are satisfied. They need to be high quality. They need to be user-centric. All of this needs to happen. And if you look at down, or totally at the bottom, you have the sources of information. And one of these is the base registry. So base registries are key enablers for you in order to deliver public services. What is a base registry? Well, if you look at the definition in the EIF, it's actually a source of master data. And what is master data? Master data are key concepts which are reused across different processes, across different public administration units. So it's data which is very transferable. So things like persons, addresses, all of these things appear in different processes. So that's master data. So what is the current state of affairs with base registries right now in public administrations? A lot of times, the different administrations work in silos. They collect data in different contexts, but many times it's actually the same data. And a lot of times they deliver public services, but they ask the data to be provided more than once. So basically, the citizens have to provide the same data in different contexts. So that's not a very good state of affairs. So how does this look? So basically, you have a lot of duplicate databases. You have point-to-point connections. You have a lot of processes which are sort of very complex. So it's not a very good state of affairs. So what do we want it to look like? Basically, we want to have master data management. We don't want to have duplicate databases. We want the person to come in, provide the data once, and not worry about providing it again. So that's what we want. But how do you get there? That's a common question. Luckily, we have Tyrion Lannister from the Game of Thrones who will sort of guide us through the process. And one of the first things he says is setting up a strategy is very important. And you need to create roadmaps at the beginning in order to be able to know where you want to go. And the process is going to be complex. You're not going to have a big bang process. You're not going to accomplish this in one go. So you'll have to go step by step with little steps in order to achieve something. And you have to be agile while you're doing it as well. So, but it's not just about the data, it's also about the people and the processes. So some of the things that you need to do is you need to break down silos. You need to create new ways of working between the different parts of the public administration. You need to look at the processes and simplify them. Basically, some people have coined the concept of process-driven master data management. It's basically where the business processes drive the master data management. But what about the data? What happens? So what do you need to do? The first thing that you need to do is to look at what type of data you have, where it is. You need to understand the data. So a lot of times it's scattered across different public administrations, different databases. So first you need to do a checkup of where it is, what happens, what type of policies exist, where it's used. After you have that, you go with step 2, and then you need to have a strategy on what to do with the data. You need to set up governance. You need to determine which data sets are your master data. What type of policies will you implement? And also, you need to in which processes will the data be used? And actually, you have to keep in mind that master data management means actively managing the data across the different public administration and not keeping it in silos. So that's very important to keep in mind. And data governance is very important there. Since it helps drive the entire process. You set standards, you set different policies. So but you need to have all this in order to drive. So, but let's look at one of the little circles that I have in the thing. So what policies will we implement? So you need to have data principles, data policies, data standards, data guidelines. But what is important, you need to have a way to actually see what type of progress you're making. So you need to install metrics, you need to monitor, you need to enforce compliance. All of these things are important. So if you go zoom a bit down for data principles, here's an example of INSPIRE principles, so that they determine what their principles are. And now, who likes jokes? Don't worry, I'm not going to tell one, but I'll just explain the principle behind jokes in the interest of semantics. So if you look at your favorite joke, a lot of times it plays around with the fact that the same word can have different meanings in different contexts. And basically, that's what creates the joke. So basically, you have a normal meaning and you have a funny meaning. Also, this happens with phrases as well. You might have one phrase which in one context means something else, and in another context, it means totally something different. And it just creates the humor. That's where the humor comes from. But with base registries, we don't want any funny business. I mean, we want to have concrete common meaning. So you want to have one specific common meaning. And let's look at examples of what happened in some member states. For example, in Denmark, when they were starting with their basic data program, they had different base registries, and they had 3 different property concepts across 3 different registries. What was their solution? They came across one common term across all the registries. So that's what they did. Another example comes from Flanders. They had the same problem. They approached it in a similar way. But what they did is they actually reused the core vocabularies provided by the ISA program to create their own core concepts. And that's why they're there. Basically, you can reuse the core vocabularies that we provide from the ISA program as native models in your databases, or you can use them as a translation layer to translate between different data models. So there are different ways to sort of work with them. So now let's look at what happens with the data from base registries. Basically, you have 2 basic concepts there. You read, write. So you either put data into the registries or you take them out for different processes. A lot of times before that, this happens a citizen would come into an office, the public administration would take out a book, they would write that in, so it was very manual. Even now, a lot of the processes are sort of point to point, so it's not very efficient. But in order to create user-centric public services and have the once-only principle in place, you cannot have this. You cannot have citizens going from one public administration office to another carrying the same piece of paper. That's not very efficient. So basically what you need to have is create an interconnecting infrastructure. So basically these mini services, you can orchestrate them. And for example, one example is Estonia, another one is Denmark. They have all created these interconnecting infrastructures. There are some different trends with these. For example, now there's a move away from SOAP XML-based web services, so there's more REST JSON-based APIs. Of course, then you have different sort of ways of setting these up. Maybe you have ESBs, sort of enterprise service buses, or API gateways, or you combine them. Or maybe you have a different way of doing them. There are different patterns that you can implement. And you also need to keep in mind that the future will bring other types of technologies. For example, GraphQL, which is a query language developed by Facebook. Maybe that's the future. Maybe, dare I say it, maybe blockchain. I mean, everybody's talking about blockchain, but it's not always the solution, but sometimes it is. And now I move over to a different concept, the concept of data quality. And data quality is very important. If you have poor data quality in your registries, the people don't trust the data. So the bad data quality just propagates itself, and you cannot have these integrated public services. So what you need to have is good quality data. And then once you have that, the people will trust the data, and then you can move on with creating these integrated public services. So what type of problems can you have with data? You can have duplicate data, you can have inconsistent data, incomplete data, outdated, unstandardized, mistakes in data, all kinds of data. They propagate themselves in your registries, and then they sort of create headaches for the people working with them. So what does good quality data look like? It's complete, it's relevant, it's precise, it's accurate, it's consistent, it's timely, and it's transparent. So this is what you want to achieve. This is where you want to go. So, but remember we play different roles at the beginning, right? So you probably have a role that you play in your administration as well, and you have different questions that you might have. So in the ISA program, we have tried to create some guidelines and different deliverables in order to try to answer those questions. But the problem is we don't have all the questions and we don't have all the answers, so we require you guys to help us come up with the questions and come up with also the ways that you've solved them. So that's very important for us. What type of things are we working on right now? We're trying to create a base registry access and interconnection framework, so which will deal with master data. So here we need your help as well. We need to know how you interconnect your base registry. What do you do? Do you use any types of frameworks? We need your input there as well. And what else are we working on? We are trying to explore the concept of a European registry of registries. And in order to find out more about that, we'll have a webinar on the 21st of June, which you are welcome to join. And spoilers, so what happens when you interconnect base registries? You'll have happy citizens because you'll have very good public services. And what else will happen? Well, your politician John will get to the Iron Throne. So that's a value proposition that you can give to your higher ups. Say, if you guys could interconnect base registries, you'll achieve what you want to achieve. So that's something that you can give them. Thank you for your attention. Basically, we have on JoinUp, we have an access to base registries page, which you can join. We want to create a community where we exchange best practices, where we try to solve different problems, try to see how you face difficulties and how you overcame them. This might sort of give inspiration to other countries as well. So thank you.